Well, I know this speaker this morning really needs no introduction, but I'm just going to tell you that you are in for an amazing treat this morning. Foster Harding is one of our beloved, powerful, incredible practitioners whom I love from the bottom of my heart, and I am so grateful that has this incredible message to gift to you this morning. And so grateful that he's showing up here for me personally as well, as I got in late last night, and he's doing this talk for us. Thank you so much, and welcome, Foster Harding.
Well, thank you. No pressure from all that introduction. No, indeed. All is well. Sure glad to see all of you here today on a summer Sunday in July with a beautiful day outside. There's a lot of places you could be besides here, but you're here, so I'm grateful. Thank you. Today we're going to talk about personal freedom. Personal freedom. In the United States, it's pretty clear that our ideas about personal freedom are pretty deeply rooted in our Declaration of Independence. It's quite an amazing document. 238 years and 16 days ago, 13 small, relatively autonomous, tethered almost to Great Britain, somehow banded together and decided that they could declare themselves an independent nation. That in itself is an amazing, amazing fact. That declaration remains one of the most powerful statements of freedom ever created in the whole history of planet Earth. I don't need to say a lot about it, but I do want to acknowledge that the Founding Fathers and Thomas Jefferson, who was sort of the scribe, the guy who took all this big array of ideas and kind of converted them into beautiful language and transcendent expressions of those ideas that have just been ringing the freedom bell ever since, certainly those people had embodied within them the presence of the divine. They were divinely guided. They were led to create something that was beyond any one individual, and it's kind of an amazing document. So I am just grateful that I live in this country where that document is kind of the shining light that has opened up the space for all of us to experience the freedom that we have in this country. I think probably what our founding fathers really intended to create, next one please, was a nation where collective and personal freedom could flourish. They were creating a context within which freedom could flow into its full expression. They were creating an opportunity for each of us to have the freedom to sing our own song. Just let it fly out there. So I want to ask, with all this talk about freedom, are there limits to our personal freedom? Are there places where our expression of freedom sort of crashes into the rocks like is happening in this picture, where there are boundaries that our freedoms really shouldn't go beyond? And I think there are a few. Not lots of them, but there are some that have some meaning. One of them is what I call Ernest Holmes' no harm clause, and there are a few legal constraints on our expression of freedom. Basically, Ernest's constraint is something like this: so long as our freedom doesn't interfere or harm anybody else's expression of freedom, does no harm to anyone, then, that's legitimate. We can express that. We're free to move in that direction so long as we're not hurting anyone else. Of course, there are a few, in fact, a lot of laws that kind of constrain what we're allowed to do and remain within the legal boundary. I think if in your judgment, your action does not violate the moral boundary that Ernest laid out, but it does seem to be against the law, then you have a choice to make. I'm not going to tell you which way to lean on that. And of course, we're told the old wisdom, our freedom of speech does not include yelling fire in a theater. So there you go. So within that array of boundaries, if we were going to each write a personal Declaration of Independence, what might we include? It begs the question, can we simply declare our way to a life that feels more free? Many times we can, and sometimes there's more to it than just declaring. Okay. I decided to think about some things I would put in my personal declaration, and the first one I'd like to be free from. The reason I'm wearing this nice loose-fitting Hawaiian shirt is I'd like to be free from belly fat. Okay? Just like this dude, my shoulder muscles and my thigh muscles have somehow converted to something that isn't muscle and kind of gathered around here. So I'd like to be done with that process. And baldness. I would love to be done with this shiny area up here. So that's another one. And gray hair. I mean, you know, that's kind of a sign of age, and I guess I'd like to not be expressing those things quite so much. In fact, it would be great to return to the wavy brown hair I had as a teen. Look at that. Isn't that something? I mean, geez, I only missed the chance to be Rhiannon's boyfriend by 56 years. And 2 wives and 6 daughters and 8 grandkids. So that might be something for another lifetime. I don't know. Anyway, there's another thing I'm starting to notice. I'd really like to be independent from all those itches and twitches and aches that come with getting older. And I guess I've said enough about that probably. And there's another thing I was hoping to tell you about. Sometimes I can go from room A to room B, and when I get to room B, my mind is just like that. And then I go back to room A, and I remember, oh yes. And then I go back to room B and try again, and maybe something different shows up. So I'd like to be free from forgetfulness. Yeah, we all forget those things that we would like not to remember. Sometimes we have trouble forgetting the things we would like to remember, but anyway. So I've been listing away up here. Anybody out here have something they'd like to put on their personal declaration list? Something you'd be willing to share? If it's too personal, probably not such a good idea. But anybody have something they want to put on their list?
Anger.
What was that again?
Anger.
Anger. Thank you. That's a very good point. You know, I had a lot of anger issues when I was maybe your age, and I used to have quite a temper. Those that know me tell me I'm mellowing with age, so it'll come. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. Here's one that might surprise you a little bit. When I was first diagnosed with diabetes 3 years ago, it was big. I mean, it was intimidating. I was in shock almost. I was angry. I was resentful. I'm saying, why me? Why me? And it was such a big thing that it really kind of blocked my view of life, my view of the beauty in life. It kind of made it hard to see a path forward beyond this big honking barrier that had jumped up in the middle of life. And so for the past 3 years, for much of it, I was focused on using Science of Mind prayer treatment to free myself from diabetes. It got better, but it didn't get gone. So probably in early this year, it looked more like this, quite a bit smaller. I'd say my healing has taken an unexpected direction. I've even come to see diabetes as a teacher, perhaps an important teacher, because it is providing the incentive for me to take better care of my body, and have better habits around my lifestyle than ever would have happened had diabetes not showed up. So I can see the beauty of life a lot more clearly now. In fact, today, it almost seems like background noise. You can see it's just a little teensy thing over there in the lower right corner. I almost think of it as my friend, and I actually don't want it to leave. Because until I fully embody those lessons it came to bring me, then I need it to stay. If it goes away, ice cream and cookies are going to take over again. So I don't want my declaration to include independence from diabetes, at least not yet, okay? You know, declaring anything is kind of an interesting process. People don't usually just declare something and then sit back waiting for it to happen. A declaration is often more of a beginning than an end. It often carries a call for action, like prepare to fight the Revolutionary War. Those colonies didn't even have an army. So it was an interesting time for them, for sure. Does a call to action always come as part of a declaration? I think maybe sometimes yes, sometimes no, but Ernest Holmes, Jesus taught, "It is done unto us as we believe," which sounds like if we believe it, it's going to happen. So then maybe the need for us to take action is a sometimes thing. On the one hand, we're told to treat and move your feet, pray and take action. And on the other hand, we're told that the law has no choice but to respond to our belief. I think for most of us, one of the kind of challenge points of life is discerning when it's appropriate to take action and when it's appropriate to let go and let God. Anybody encounter this? I mean, yeah. In an article by Jesse Jennings in this month's Science Mind magazine, he addressed this same conundrum by saying, "The serenity prayer comes to mind, the courage to change, serenity to accept, and the wisdom to know when to do which." And then he says, this is doable. Wow, it's doable. He didn't say a lot about how it was doable, and I conclude that it mostly, for me at least, has to do with divine guidance. Divine guidance is kind of a powerful principle. When you seek guidance, it's not saying to God, "Please take care of this for me," and walking away. It's saying, "Please show me the way forward. Show me what I need to do." So it carries with it an implication that you are willing and able to take action based on what that guidance is. And my experience is when you ask for guidance with that mindset, it comes. It may take time to discern the still small voice. God doesn't usually scream at us, but the answer will come. It will come. Part of the process is trusting that it will come. Okay. I'm wondering if there could be a downside to emphasizing personal independence. Life in the 21st century here on planet Earth, here in Castle Rock, Colorado, keeps showing us it's impossible for any of us to be completely independent of other people. The idea of oneness would agree that in some sense, pure independence is like an illusion. We all are interdependent. The saying, "no man is an island," was originally found in a poem written by an English poet named John Donne in 1624. So it's not a new idea that humans are dependent upon each other. Let's take a quick look at how that plays out in Castle Rock. Anybody go shopping this week? Buy groceries, gas, shirt? I think probably, truth be known, all of us spend at least a dime somewhere shopping. Let's stop and think. I bought a couple of weeks ago, I went to King Soopers buying groceries, and I saw some beautiful kiwis, so I picked up 3 or 4 of them and stuck them in my bag. Got them home, and I'm looking at the little sticker on it. New Zealand. Holy smokes, how did that kiwi grown in New Zealand find its way to King Soopers in Castle Rock? Well, the truth is, it involved hundreds, if not thousands of people, a complex logistics system, including a 747 load of kiwis from Auckland, New Zealand to someplace on the west coast of this country. All kinds of truck drivers, people to stock the shelves, farmers that raised it, people that created the fuel that went in the tractor the farmer used and that flew the jet over here, and so on and so on and so on. It took thousands of people to bring a kiwi to Foster. Holy smokes. Well, think about the gas that you put in your car. Same story. People from Saudi Arabia to Kansas are involved in getting the crude oil out of the ground. It has to be shipped to refineries and then shipped back and end up somehow in a tank underneath the pump at the gas station. Again, thousands of people. And we could go on with other examples. But I think it's important to acknowledge we have the freedom to share life with all the other people on this planet and all the other life forms on this planet. In fact, it's human nature to share with each other. So I think our declaration should include a reminder for us to hold in gratitude all those nameless, faceless people all over the planet who make our modern life possible. Perhaps a better way to create our declaration might be to ask ourselves, what gifts do I have? What am I willing to share? Think about this center, this spiritual living center right here in Castle Rock. Think about the trust, the love, the joy, the acceptance, the smiles, the hugs, the wisdom, and the mutual support that we share within this circle of people. Wow. In a setting like this, it's easy to embrace our interdependence. It just shines forth in glorious ways. That's why we keep showing up. So it's easy to embrace interdependence when it lifts us up like it does here. What about those connections in our society that are more distant? People that are not within our circle of friends or our family, but are just kind of out there. Is it important? Does it matter whether or not we extend our good intentions, our gratitude to those folks? Maybe it does more than we sometimes realize. A good example. A few months ago now, probably 3 or 4, Art had just undergone some extensive surgery. And it was like 3 weeks afterwards, and he was already starting to work out again. I mean, I remarked to him how fast and well he seemed to be progressing. He was healing remarkably. And he acknowledged that and said, yes, my surgeon noticed that too. And then he told me he really loves to operate on firemen. Firemen, he said, are part of a close-knit group. They love their work. They just can't wait to get back to their tribe. And that's how he thought, that's the reason why he thought they healed so much faster and with fewer complications than most folks. Then he went on to say he really didn't like to operate on policemen. He went further and said policemen almost universally are not so much part of a team as they're like lone operators out there in their mindset. They usually don't like their work very much. They're not eager to get back to work. And they heal slower and with more complications than almost any other group of people that this guy operates on. So that's interesting. Here we have 2 similar looking organizations. Hierarchical, kind of pseudo-military, chiefs, captains, lieutenants, and so forth. Both are in the business of assuring our safety, our well-being, as they're their work in the world, and yet there's this distinct difference in how they perceive their work and even in how they heal from medical dilemmas. Think about your last interaction with a policeman. Most likely in our world was a traffic situation. So you've been pulled over, he's pulled up behind you, takes a minute because he's checking your license plate to be sure you're not some felon that's got an AK-47 in your back seat or something. And then he comes walking up. And you're sitting there looking out your window at him. What are you feeling? Are you feeling gratitude? Not so much. Not so much. You're more likely feeling frustrated, disgusted with yourself because you got caught doing something you shouldn't have been. So the energy vibration of that interaction is pretty negative. Now, supposing you were driving down the street and off on the side there was a fender bender, more or less serious. There's a fire truck and an ambulance attending to the victims of this accident. When you drive by, what kind of energy vibration are you sending? You're concerned about the victims. You're grateful that the firemen and the EMTs are there taking care of these people who might be injured. You're really hoping nobody's seriously hurt. A very different energy vibration that we are sending to our firemen and EMTs versus our policemen. So, I conclude that we are the ones responsible. We are the ones responsible for Art and his crews healing faster from surgery and loving their work, and for policemen healing slower with more complications and not enjoying their work. It's our attitudes toward those two groups that make their life experience what it is. Holy smokes, it's us. Maybe I need to change my attitude to gratitude for the people that work on our police force. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. Okay, you know, we already have been given a number of freedoms, generously, fully, by divine grace, that we may under-recognize and perhaps are therefore under-experienced as we move through life. Freedom of choice. We talk a lot about that in Science of Mind. We may not always get what we want. Life may bring us something that we say, holy smokes, I sure wish that hadn't showed up. But we still always have the choice about the response we have to whatever came. We always have that choice. Then there's the freedom to accept the infinity of gifts that divine grace has already provided. I'll tell you this, we are constantly underestimating who we are as human beings. Human beings are amazing, and we tend to downplay that or not recognize it. We could experience so much more power and freedom if we would only accept our own worthiness to receive. We constantly put ourselves down without even knowing we're doing it, okay? And finally, the one I want to mention is freedom to trust life. I think this is perhaps the most profound and least accepted gift available to us. I don't know if I've ever met anybody who was able to fully trust life and accept everything that came their way. That would mean the universe never brings anything to us that is not intended for our good. It means trusting that everything that comes to us holds a divine gift meant for our good. Yes, I said everything. Everything. That means there must be good for all involved within those dark experiences that bring us a big dose of pain or fear. Some dark experiences I personally know about include a mother, a teen mother, whose firstborn child was born with no arm below the left elbow. Holy smokes. I know of a boy who lives in California who was born with no legs. Not partial legs, not short legs, not one leg, no legs. Holy smokes. We know a young adult woman who has significant developmental difficulties since birth. Since birth. She's in her mid-20s now. She, for the first time in a very structured environment, is living outside of her own parents' home. It's a huge step for her. You can imagine the burden her parents have been carrying for the past quarter century. Wow. Wow. No wonder it's hard to trust life. How can experiences like these possibly reflect our good? When we face such events, it's perfectly natural to fear life and resist what it showed up here that was so dark for us. Has anybody in this room not ever had a dark experience? Right. It's part of life. So how can we reconcile our dark experiences with the principles taught by Ernest Holmes in Science of Mind? Ernest says, there is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. And he's right. But it seems to me that the way this statement is often understood falls short of trusting life. Just as me with diabetes, we try to use the law as a tool to avoid the life experiences that we judge as dark, rather than trust them to contain our good. We often use the law as in an attempt to control life rather than trust life. I had prayed for years for a way to control my weight and live a more healthy lifestyle. And yet I failed to recognize the gift when it came, because I had an ugly label. It was called diabetes. It's taken me 3 years to figure it out. I'm slowly, and probably should emphasize that slowly word, slowly learning to trust life more fully. As that progresses, I'm coming to believe that when we are really trusting life, we can change Ernest's statement around to this. There is a power for good in the universe, and you can trust it. Even trust it to use you. There is a power for good in the universe, and you can trust it to use you. How can we move from fearing parts of life to trusting all of life? How can we move to accepting life as it flows to us rather than make judgments about it and try to control it? Why is it so difficult to fully trust life? I think we may be missing the point of why we are here. I strongly believe that from God's perspective, earthly life as human beings exists only as a vehicle to support the evolution of the eternal soul that you are. Let me personalize that. The eternal soul that animates your every heartbeat and every breath came into this life as you to support its evolution toward a whole, perfect, and complete experience of its own divinity. It is here to do that through the vehicle of your life. I believe in reincarnation, but it really doesn't matter what you believe about that. I am still certain that your present life is but a modest chapter in a story so vast as to elude our comprehension. It's stunning. If we could realize who and what we are, we would just be stunned. We are more amazing than we ever are destined to realize. Let's have a cosmic moment and think about the universe for just a minute. The latest estimate scientists have is that there are about 8 billion galaxies in our universe, 8 billion Milky Ways or something similar. This particular one's called the Umbrella Galaxy. It's out there somewhere. It's a spiral galaxy, kind of similar to the Milky Way in that way. Okay. There are approximately anywhere from 1 to 3 billion stars in each galaxy, each of those 8 billion galaxies. Many of those stars have a solar system of planets. How on earth can we convince ourselves that planet Earth is the only place in the entire universe that has intelligent life? You are a child of the Most High God. I believe we have spiritual brothers and sisters scattered all over this universe. And mathematics says there's no reason for us to think this is the only universe. Infinity suggests they could be unnumbered. They're just beyond our reach in terms of science. So when you view your life within such an enormous context, maybe you begin to see the events of this life a little differently. During those times when we're sort of basking in pure bliss, and I'm grateful for when they do show up, I think our soul evolution is sort of at a standstill. We're just blissing out, and that's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. Profound elation, bliss, often follows when we finally have moved through a difficult experience. There's such a sense of relief, such a sense of freedom. Notice I didn't say that we avoided or danced around this experience. We moved through it. I think when we trust life and remember we're here in support of soul evolution, we can see that it's sometimes a spiritual error to use the law to avoid that which comes our way. I believe we're better served to use the law to create within us the capacity to grow through the experience with grace. That is how soul evolution happens. Although I haven't had such a life, I'm convinced that pure, uninterrupted bliss would soon become just plain boring. The eternal soul in here came here to experience growth through the vehicle of this life that I am. The same is true for each of us. Once I accepted this picture of who I am and why I am here, it has gradually been easier to trust life. The more I trust life, the more my soul sings and soars. More joy than I ever dreamed possible until just these past few years. And it just keeps expanding. So based on that, I recommend that our personal declaration of freedom should focus on trusting and accepting life. Trusting and accepting life. Let us pray. Here we are in the presence of the Holy One, the Divine, God itself. We sit here within it, as part of it, not separate from it in any way. We are an expression of it. We came into this life with the purpose of experiencing life to the fullest, experiencing life in ways that expand our own experience of and our soul's experience of life. Life. We're here to learn to trust it. We are here to use the law in service to that focus. When we see this big picture of who we are and why we are here, gratitude just flows. What an amazing, amazing thing this human life is. Gratitude is surely the appropriate emotion. So as we sit here knowing this, we just give thanks. And we acknowledge the truth of these words by saying together, And so it is. Amen.